This is my second close-up mini painting challenge, and I'm basically learning how to paint at a small scale like this as I make these videos. In my last mini painting video, I hit a wall when it came to painting the lettering along the bottom of the quarter. I would start building up the basic shapes, but then I had trouble controlling the paint at such small levels. A large blob would spread into other areas, and then I'd have to start over. So in that video, I just painted it over and left the lettering out. So this time, the challenge is simple. Can I actually paint the year on a penny? This is a bigger challenge because the year on a penny is even smaller than the letters on the quarter. The best part of that first quarter video was what happened after I posted it. A lot of you left helpful suggestions in the comments, especially those who paint miniatures. The suggestions were practical and included recommendations for brushes, tools, and techniques that could help me achieve finer details. It was obvious that I needed better brushes. The detail brushes that I originally had, those were too large to handle the detail at this scale. In fact, I had resorted to trimming those bristles down with a pair of scissors. Another person recommended the fine detail brushes that they use in nail salons for painting nails. I'm totally open to using tools from different fields. If it makes my work easier, I'll give it a try. These nail brushes come with a hard plastic cap that will help protect the fine points. This is especially important for storing or transporting these brushes. Another game changer was this magnifier. It allows me to see more of the detail. The cool thing is that it's wide enough so that I can see through it with both eyes, and that maintains my depth perception. So these are all the new tools. Let's give this a shot and see what the results are. Before I even touched the paint, drawing the numbers was a mini challenge of its own. The point of the pencil lead was about as wide as one of the numbers. I ended up sanding it down and using the sharp edge of the chisel tip, basically trying to cheat a thinner line out of the same pencil. Once I had a rough drawing, I started the painting in my usual manner. I'm not chasing perfect detail right away. I'm trying to build up a structure that I can refine as I go. So I basically blocked in two values, a lighter value for the highlight areas and a darker value for the shadows. At this stage, it looks messy. There were many moments where it got worse before it got better, but that's normal. I would often get to a stage that looks like it's a failure, but then you just have to keep on going. Painting coins has some unique problems other than the small scale. The biggest problem is the reflective surface. This penny is much more reflective than the quarter. The surface changes color depending on the angle. Even the color of my hands reflect onto the coin and shifts what I'm seeing. Small changes in lighting in the room change the color of the coin while I'm trying to match it. So a lot of what I'm really painting is not the coin itself, but it's the appearance of the coin in a specific lighting situation. And the lighting seems to keep changing. The other challenge is the paint texture. At this scale, every brushstroke has some texture. Even when I'm trying to put down a smooth area, the paint can look lumpy under magnification. And those lumps create glare when it's wet. To paint the fine details, I have to thin the paint out somewhat, but that introduces a new set of trade-offs. If the paint is too thick, it leaves ridges and texture. On the other hand, if it's too thin, it can flood into other areas and create blobs instead of a clean line. And sometimes I finally get the brush into the right position, and the paint has already started drying on the tip. So instead of making a line, it skips and it doesn't put any paint down. One thing I might try next time is using a thinner paint, something like fluid acrylics or even acrylic ink. Maybe I'll just use it in the area where I need fine detail, like the micro lettering. The coverage isn't as good with these types of paints, and they dry fast, but it should solve the texture problem, and that might be worth it. That's kind of what this whole series is about. It's about experimenting by changing one variable at a time and seeing what actually matters. Here I'm trying to add some bright highlights onto the numbers. It takes a steady hand and it helps to hold your breath as you're applying the paint. As I said before, sometimes the paint will dry on the tip of the brush before you get the point into position. The 3 has a weird descender that goes below the baseline. It doesn't quite look right, but that's how this font is designed. Here's one of those blobs I'm talking about. I thinned out the paint to put in the dark shadow sections of the numbers, and I ended up with a big blob on the 0. So I just wiped that up and let it dry so I can come back to it. I realized that the background needed to go darker, and I also needed to add some more shadows to Abe Lincoln. So I spent some time working on the darker sections, and I felt like this is probably as far as I could take this painting. When I look at it at close magnification, the numbers aren't as crisp as I would like them to be. But the thing is, when you shrink it down to actual size, it does create the impression of the date. If you have any more tips about how I could improve these mini paintings, leave them in the comments below.